Hey everybody, welcome into the Beehive. This is where we stack precious metals like it's pollen and nectar. And our pollen is silver, our nectar is gold, preserving our wealth as honey of old, and like ancient metals, we hold our own. And tonight we're going to be talking with Space Miner, and we're just going to talk about some of the unique things about metals and their properties and why they're valuable. Looks like we have Triple Eight the Great, welcome in, my friend. 7 Stacks, thanks for being here. And OTG Unhinged is here also. Joseph Lopez, good to see you. Good to see you. Hope you're well. And Space Miner is here. He is backstage fixing up his setup, so he will be out shortly. And how are you guys? How are you all doing? So, while I wait, I'm going to set up my double slide here and try something new with concerning metallurgy. So here we have, you guys see, what am I on a delay? Am I delayed here? Yes, we are delayed. What is going on? Looks like we're having some technical difficulty already. But anyhow, we have a Balboa that is 40% and a Balboa that looks the same. I mean, you can see a little bit of a difference. Move something here. Looks like Space Miner is joining us here. Yeah, they look the same, pretty much same design. One is 90, one is 40, but aside from knowing which is which, I think you can check by the date as well, will tell you, but I'm going to put them on the double slide here and see if we can see a difference. And you're 90%, even though you can't really tell the difference when looking from the stamp, you should be able to tell with the slide. Let me bring Space Miner up here. Space Miner, welcome in. Looks like you're muted, my friend.
Stupid delayed technology. Hey.
Hey.
Thanks for having me up, man.
Yep. How
That's good. Doing good, man. What's on your mind tonight?
Well, I don't know if we'll be able to get it back, just by trying to force it, but I've talked with you a few times, and in private conversation on the phone, I'm able to pull some amazing information about metals that I hadn't thought about and didn't understand, and just in talking to you, I was able to glean a lot, and it answered some of the questions I had about osmium. And when I was trying to get to the bottom of the question about crystallized osmium, I wasn't getting answered. And then finally, once you started speaking to me in metallurgical terms, the answers kind of showed themselves. And so, yeah, I don't know if we're going to be able to make that happen again here tonight, but we're going to give it a shot. And I know you're not necessarily an expert, so I'm not expecting you to know everything I ask you. But yeah, I just thought I would see if we could pull anything out of your mind about metals and their unique characteristics and what makes them valuable.
Well, I appreciate your confidence in me, and I guess we'll see where we can take this.
All right.
You know, full disclaimer, I'm like a caveman that stumbled into a chemistry lab, and
Okay.
I just started smashing stuff until I started figuring out what I was smashing,
Yeah.
and that's about where I'm at nowadays. You know, I just kind of absorb what I can, when I can, how I can, and just move forward in life like that.
Perfect. Well, this channel is full of that, so it should go well. All right. So yeah, I think most of us know. Let's start with some just very basic stuff and work our way in. I think most everybody knows on our channel why silver and gold is unique. Gold, I think you can go back to ancient times. I have some ancient coins. So far, only silver. I'm hoping to get some gold here, but it's not because you can't get them. You most definitely can get them. And what's cool about them is depending on how they were preserved, if they got used and handed around, they might have some wear on them, but some got minted and put away and buried for 2,000 years and are still in great condition. They don't have wear on them. So the image is still just shiny and is almost exactly what it would have been like the day it was minted 2,000 years ago. So that's one thing that I think they definitely recognized at that time, because they had other metals at that time, but gold was still so valuable because it can produce an image for forever and have it be perfectly shiny and preserved as the day you made it. So, that's definitely something that has made, kings desire it. And it's just been so valuable and always used and always needed and always carries that value with it, that it's just natural money in that way. Right. And so, but we have all these new metals out here and we have great technologies, and we're I think we're at a unique time where we've been living in this paper money world, and that's been buying us our real goods. And but I feel like that's kind of going to shift, and we're going into a commodity based reality a bit more. And so I think some of these metals that we're kind of taking it granted for right now, but as we move forward, um, I think there might be some big shifts, and especially in some of these unique and rare metals and what they're used and alloyed for and mixed with and the properties they have themselves are very unique, and there's nothing else like it because these are natural elements, right? So um, yeah, what do you see? You have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think you're dead on. You know, we don't make elements, we discover them. You know, and these are natural states of things, and well, generally speaking, we don't make elements. We kind of like manipulate elements. But regardless, what the point is like it doesn't matter if it's iron or gold. We're not making more. We're only collecting more, and ease of ease of harvest and the frequency of harvest really starts becoming some of your primary financial question, financial standpoints in this. And gold's it's not it's they say it's everywhere, but in real life, there's only a couple places you go to pan it. There's only a couple places it's going to be in a solid crystal form, and it takes a lot of energy to get it out. Some metals easier than others, some metals more difficult than others, and that's, I think, kind of where price evaluation of metal all really kind of kick off. You offered a great parable or analogy earlier as to two guys sitting across the stream, and And maybe we can start there and kind of pick it up from there. I think would be a good one.
Okay. Yeah, you want me to kind of retell my thesis?
Yes,
So,
and because I heard it already, I'm going to make a 2-second run, and I'll be right back while you start that off.
yep. Okay. So yeah, we were talking earlier, and there's lots of different ways to look at this, but I just made up a story to kind of to make my point. And if you went back to the original culture, your original 10 men or whatever, and you're watching your friend across the river, and you notice that he is breaking up ground and he's sprinkling these seeds in the ground, and you don't know what he's doing, but you're watching him. And 6 months later, you see over there that he's got a nice full grain field, and he's over there harvesting it. And you realize, okay, now he's got a bunch of wheat, and you can make bread out of that, and I would love some of that bread. So he goes over to see if he can have some, and the guy is like, yeah, of course, but I worked really hard at this, and this is my reward for that, and what do you have of value in exchange? And the guy says, well, nothing. But he noticed when he was going home that night and crossing the river, he noticed something shiny and gold, and he picks it up, takes it back to his fireplace, and sets it on the rocks by the fire, and goes to bed and gets up the next morning, and it's made a nice shiny plate of gold. And he thinks, oh, I can make this into a plate or a bowl, and look how clean it is, and he can use this to make his breads with, and not get any rock chunks in it and break your teeth. So he takes the bowl over to the guy and trades for some grain. And then over time, the guy is gonna like it, because it's nice to mix with and cleans out easy and no chips off of it. And over the long period of time, a few generations, you're gonna notice that never decays. And other things you try break and break down and rust and tarnish, but the gold just remains polished, and you can it's very malleable. You can melt it and make it into different tools, but you don't lose any, and it always stays shiny. So just from its use case scenarios from a get-go, people were going to value it. People are going to want it because, all of its different properties that make it so unique. So is that a good enough basic start just for?
Yeah, and this is probably a good segue into, why we value our metals differently, because back in those early days, these guys were harvesting, iron and copper, zinc and lead really early, and they only had a couple metals to really work with in the first place, and so as they were discovering metals, they were also discovering the attributes of the metal. They notice copper from this area seems to act differently than copper from this area, but then here it is, they discover gold. And one of the first things, like we were speaking earlier, one of the first things you'd notice is when you kept your water in it, and when you kept your water and your wine in it, you wouldn't notice it kept longer, and you wouldn't notice water cleared up over time, when it was kept in this.
And that's where silver would come in. So even better, you'd notice, well, I wonder if that works with silver. And you'd notice silver keeps water even better as a purification system. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a uniqueness in itself. Both work well and both are unique. And so they both start to stand out in that way.
Yeah. So you go back. So let's keep it in time reference right now, ancient times, we were gold was easier to discover. We all looked down, we recognized the pretty yellow metal, it carries the attributes, it was easy to collect, harvest, and work with. So naturally, it made it like really valuable to them. They can work it over and over and over and over and over and over and never lose anything. Well, then they discovered silver. But at the time, silver was worth even more than gold because of how difficult it was to extract and process and refine. And but yet it carried the same attributes of gold, or similar attributes, I should say, or better, in some cases, like you were saying. And this is where we start reflecting on, I think, the man hour input, the where in modern age we'd say, hey, this is employee time and this is insurances and fuels and equipment maintenances. Well, these guys had similar issues back in the day. It took a lot of effort, especially back then, to process your silver, to really get your silver out of there. And it made it really valuable because not everybody could just go out there and do it,
Yeah.
And it's similar to nowadays too.
Yeah. Dub C says here, no other element is yellow, and these early people worship the sun. Yeah, that's probably true as well. So I just think, and even so, just like you're saying, these gold and silver are quite easy to look at and point out some of these obvious reasons why they are valuable. But then all of our world is built with steel beams, and copper is for electrification, and so now that we are move through time ahead, we're getting all kinds of byproduct from all this mining, finding these new metals, and we may not even know what some of these new metals are good for, but their unique properties are going to make them valuable in some way, especially if they're unique, right?
Well, right. Kind of like we can reflect on platinum as an example. Platinum was considered an unwanted impurity. In fact, you got charged if there was platinum in your gold. We didn't know what to do with it. And then we found something to do with it. We isolated it. We found we can do things with this, but it still took decades of people driving on mysterious roads of innovation, having no idea where they're trying to take this technology, only that they're trying to push that technology forward. And here we are in modern day, and we couldn't go on without platinum group metals. And that being said, a lot of other metals as well,
Yeah, and so I was looking at, and it's interesting, like Sean here, Sean's Precious Bullion is saying the word salary comes from the days of payment in salt, and I've heard that, and but salt is in the elemental chart along with metals, like it's a type of metal. Is that right?
It's true. Yes, it is. It's a very light metal, but it is a metal.
So
it's one of our lightest.
Wow, yeah, that's crazy. I did not realize that salt was a metal, but that's what I was seeing the other day. So yeah, that's interesting. The sunshine element, welcome in. Good to see you. Buy Osmium and be happy. Indeed. Platinum is really making moves. Yeah. No doubt. It's up 1480 or something like that last I looked. Unripe gold per the indigenous Central Americans. Unripe. Oh yeah. Okay. They thought it was unripe. Not. Yeah, I've heard that as well. That they thought just with time some of those other metals would turn into gold.
Yeah, and in Latin it was platina, which was little silver.
Yep. Indeed.
And but that's a point I raise a lot, and I'd like to just raise it right away before we kick into this too far. Sure. Is sometimes, kind of like what I was pointing at earlier, you look, it wasn't until the, you know, 1800s that we finally started doing anything with gold beyond, jewelry and bowls. You know, like, I mean, we've been doing some stuff with gold, yeah, whatever. But, there has to be a culture of technology around it as well to be able to advance it. It back in the day, we made plates and bowls, but today we can stretch an ounce of gold to the moon or something like that, or wrap it around the earth 5 times. I don't know, whatever the figure is now. You know, the point is like, when we're considering these metals and metals that these alternative investment metals, what I call alternative investment metals, when we're considering these, you know, we got to look at a lot of the qualities that, all right, so let's like go back to like silver, platinum, gold, right? We're pretty familiar with these. We all know them and understand them. We call them precious metals, yada, yada, yada. But they're not the only valuable metal in the world, and and life is dependent on a lot of different types of metals. And I swear I was going somewhere with this, but you want to bring me back on track, B?
Okay, well, I'm not exactly sure where you're going, but yeah, I mean that's kind of the thing is that there's these metals. Well, let's just take rhenium for example, like Ian was pointing out, and I learned while I was down at the New Orleans Investment Conference that I was just talking. So I was behind the precious metals desk, and a couple people came by. So I was talking to them about precious metals, and they were nodding their head. And then I got on rhenium. I said, "This is a new metal that Ian was showing me," and I was talking about how it was unique and used in some of these unique alloys. And the guy was like, "Yeah, you're right. That actually was a very valuable metal." And then he got to talking about some of the testing that they were doing with it, and he was agreeing that yeah, that was one of the metals that alloyed best. And that he was agreeing that it should be a very valuable metal. So
Yeah, that was my point earlier. Thank you. Is that sometimes we don't have, sometimes we develop technologies and processes that we don't have a place for yet. But there's somebody out there that needs that process or needs that technology and ultimately is going to need that piece of metal to do it. Because yet some, metals have certain characteristics, and so for a lot of us, like the platinum people, platinum and palladium, like you really got to have hope for technology and hope for future industry, to drive that metal right now. Because outside of that, you're waiting for another technology for the metal, and someday we're not going to need much of that at all. So it's not, but it's going to be worth a lot too. So I guess I was kind of thinking about osmium in the process, but and rhenium for that matter, because rhenium, one of the challenges offered to rhenium investment is like there's just so little. There's just so little, and they get skeptical about investing in alternative metals because they're thinking oh, this is a thin market, and it's really not as thin as people would like to think it is. In fact, that's one of the driving factors in our gold and our silver and our platinum. If not, then we'd invest in copper because it's so much prettier.
yes,
like,
says you, yeah.
But I think my point's coming out.
Yeah.
Is that gold is we use it as a standard. Gold and silver, we really use these as the standards, right? These are our measuring marks, but they're not the limits. They're not the limits of capabilities. They're not the limits of industry, and they're not the limits of your investment either. And I think a lot of we all seem to fall in the trap of it's going to be gold, it's going to be silver, it's going to be platinum, it's going to, where's my platinum? It's in here somewhere. But anyways, there's other metals too that carry all the same kind of qualities that you would want out of your precious metals. Not all of them, because otherwise it'd be called precious metal. But like rhenium, there's just so little of it out there that it has limited points of application. If there was more of it, we'd use it for a lot more stuff. But for the stuff we're using it now, it's in a lot of ways irreplaceable. In a lot of places, it's irreplaceable until we figure out something new.
Yeah, so I want to touch on that right now, and just so happens in the situation that we're at, when we're going into this commodity, what I believe to be a commodity age or whatever you would call it, China has been going around and buying up doré, unrefined silver, for a few years. And plus, the Shanghai Exchange has been buying and selling at a higher premium, a few dollars higher than America for a few years.
Trying to get the sellers to float over.
Right, in the metal as well. And so Ian, I was just asking him last night, can you get a hold of more rhenium then? And he was saying that it's becoming hard and that it has to go through China and it has to be a certain order, and it's gotten much more, they're much more hesitant to sell it, and they have to be able to back it up on the backside, and it's coming from China. And then I heard from you on a separate conversation, unknown to each other, that you were trying to get a hold of a certain metal and your order had been put in and accepted, but then they got back to you that they were out of that product, and to get more, it had to come from China, and it turned out it was difficult enough that they just canceled your order.
Yeah.
So, that kind of goes to prove out that must be becoming a thing, and it makes sense that they're a step ahead and trying to get a hold of these rare earths and precious metals and control that market, because it's going to start to go that way. So what do you have?
Well, if you look at China right now and really think about it, these guys are ahead of us on some of these investments, partly because they're also ahead of us on their crash. These guys have been crashing for a long time before we were like really crashing. They've already been taking the suffer. They've already been taking the kick in the butt, and now they're learning their lessons from it. And so they're making their motions based on this. You live in poverty long enough and your whole economy is crashing, and your dollar, your yen, is crashing. Or is it the yen out there, or is that Japanese? I always get them confused. But
the yen is Chinese, I believe.
Yeah, yen is Chinese, and I forget the Japanese. Anyways, not important to the matter. Fact is I think China has already been crashing for so long. They're at that natural stage of like desperate recovery, where we are just entering that stage here in America. A lot of us are just waking up. A lot of us are just gaining our education. A lot of us are just figuring out what's really going on in the world, that we've had the wool pulled over our eyes. And it's hard for some people to wake up. And so they don't really understand right now what China's doing or why they'd be doing this. And we're quick to kind of point a finger and say, oh, you're a bad guy. But at the same time, I mean, we're getting ready to enter. Yeah, that's right. The yuan is Chinese and the yen is Japanese. Thank you, guys.
Yep. Thanks,
appreciate you putting me on track. But, it's not like we deal with these every day. But, they're ahead of us on the crash and they're ahead of us on the recovery. And we're just entering it.
Yeah.
And, America moves quick. Don't get me wrong. When people catch on, they're going to catch on quick. And we have a lot more swinging power than a lot of our Eastern neighbors, So we can make a huge effect, and we can really kind of like save huge portions of our society and our culture by taking the initial step of recognizing the delusion that's been on us that, like, this trust system that was built, this Federal Reserve note, this trust that will take care of the reserves, will take care of the metal. We just need to have the fungibility right now so that we can save our nation. But then they never let it go. Then they started destroying our nation and a purposeful devaluation of our dollar. And here we are going digital. And I'm with you, B. I'm saying a tangible asset based economy, a tab economy, meaning you're not going to be able to run a tab with your banks. You're not just going to be able to march in your bank and get some phenomenal interest rate on top of some $100,000 loan. They're going to say, no, back it up. You know, what are you going to back it up with? You got to have a tangible, something we can put our hands on. You know, and so we commonly go to our gold and our silver, our copper, our platinums. We jump to those. But while the world is still busy with those, and this is kind of where we were getting at earlier, there are other metals out there, more rare than your gold and silver, more use case than your gold and silver, and a bigger part of our daily life than your gold and silver. Just because we're not aware of it doesn't mean it's going to change what we're trying to do with it. If everybody wants to have a phone tomorrow or wants to update to your newest iPhone, you're going to start needing some metals that are, well, you guys are going to say this, gold's not the most valuable metal in the world. It's also not the most useful metal. It's a good one. It's a good one. But it's not the most useful metal in the world, nor is it the rarest, nor is it the most valuable, you know. And I'm not sitting in here trying to tell you guys to go buy a bunch of weird ass metal, but you know, you'd have to be like Dork 5000 like me to kind of really jump in. But you know, it's time that we kind of like wake up and get sharp that there's more going on here than countries trying to turn their dollars into gold. I mean, if China shuts us down tomorrow, like, I mean, full on shuts us down, blackballs us tomorrow, we're screwed. We're screwed. There are so many metals that come out of China that we simply cannot provide for ourselves. There is no competitor. There is no magical miracle, where the economy, where there's a need, the economy will pick it up. Like, no, dude, there's some things that if you get cut off, that's it.
Yeah.
You're cut off.
That's what I see too, and I haven't talked too much about it. A little bit is our just-in-time economy, and all our manufacturing has been moved out, and so that's there could be some big problems in our with it getting material, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and another point to be had, like let's just go back to our precious preciouses, right? And look at silver. You know, we have to have a big enough copper demand, a big enough copper economy, to justify them digging up the copper, to justify them processing the copper, to get the zinc and the silver and the lead and stuff out, and to get these, these are byproducts. Your precious metals, 9 times out of 10, are byproduct of mining something else. Your most valuable metals are usually not aimed at. They're byproducts of something else that we're using. And so every time we lose a copper mine, every time we lose a copper economy or a copper contract, we're not just hurting copper. We're hurting, the zinc and the silver and the lead. It comes with it. And a lot of other things too with that, a lot of other weird metals that people wouldn't expect. Sorry, I'm drolling, aren't I?
No, yeah, that's what I'm wanting to hear more about. And one second. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about metal itself, and I guess maybe a good way to get at this is just kind of talk about what when I was looking into crystallized osmium, and I was trying to find, it's the most dense. It's as hard as diamonds or close to it. It's the most abrasion resistant. It's the most inert. It's the most value. It's all these the most, and I'm just like, wow, this is amazing. But where is the weak spot? Where is its, you know, is there some, where is its weakness? And I couldn't really find an answer on that. And not that it, I'm just wondering what is its weakest point. Everything has a weakness, right? And so it's this positive in all these ways. So that's what I was kind of trying to hone in on, and I couldn't really get an answer out of anybody. But when we were talking metallurgically, that it kind of came to me. And so what, it's really hard because it's so dense. It's so tightly packed together that, well, it is the most dense naturally occurring, right?
Correct.
So and it's hard. That because it's so dense, that makes it hard.
Well, and a lot of that also has to do with its crystal plane, its planar structure,
Yeah.
because it fits very uniform, so it tends to make very nice flat surfaces, and it has very strong bonds. It bonds to itself very well, but it doesn't stretch very far, and so atoms atoms don't stretch like we think. They kind of reach like a power tension point, and then they just reposition, you know, like according to charge. They don't stretch like we would think, like a big rubber band. You know, it's kind of like, electropotential going on. It's kind of like a data transfer, the difference between analog and data, right? Analog, you can get a weak signal and it'll be like real staticky, and but you can kind of still hear the words. Well, data is transferred in packets. So if enough of those packets aren't available, if you don't have enough of the information available to create like a cohesive message, it just drops the transmission. And that's why we have data drop, where it just stops. There's not enough information, not enough packet, not enough cohesion. Well, it's kind of the same way atomically speaking. So that's kind of what hard is about. It can go a little bit of ways. It holds together really, it wants to hold together really, really, really strongly. And then, and as we start stretching that electromagnetic potential, there comes a point where there's just not enough to hold it there, and it just returns back to wherever it's most comfortable. You could think about it that way.
Right.
And it's instant.
Weakest point, and let's go there.
Yeah, and it's instant too, which is really kind of cool. It's either on or it's off. It's really kind of a neat thing. It's not like, electrons, because electrons move in higher states the further away, like higher, it takes a higher energy state to live further from your nucleus. And so you're, at a certain point, you're so far away from your nucleus that if that power potential isn't there, you're either going to return back to your lower state, or you're going to go find somewhere else to align your power point, to align your power frequency with. You see what I mean? A higher state. So never mind, I'm doing it again. Well, dang it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But for me, the stretching, I like, so with me, what helped was thinking about if you were to go to bend it. There's a word now, I can't think of it, but there's
malleability.
well, no, and retention and but that's where its weakness is. It's 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 not hardness isn't its weakness. Abrasion resistance isn't its weakness. Density isn't its weakness. It's kind of a combination
Well,
of
it's
that,
more
right?
brittle.
Right, because that makes it brittle. And so as like if you're gonna bend it, if you're gonna you know take it and apply pressure and bend it, that's where its weakness is because it can't ply, it can't stretch or malleability. Right, there's no malleability there. It's another word that I'm trying to think of that I can't. But and as like fiberglass, when you kind of break it apart, you can't push it back together. Then it's been separated and it won't go back together. So it's brittleness, but that's because it's hard and dense, right? Like uh
Right. The Now density does not always equate to hardness, so it just so happens to be both hard and dense, because like rhenium as an example is not really that hard. It's really not that hard of a metal. It's kind of it's somewhere between like it's somewhere between like tungsten and it's right under tungsten probably, if I had to guess. you know, and so, but it's got a really strong mass. Rhenium's, getting close to the density of osmium. So that's part of why they wrote the periodic. Part of why they write the periodic table the way they do
yeah.
is because all of these elements have all these crazy unique attributes, right? And it doesn't, it's like this wild conglomeration of all these little critters running around, and somebody's got to catalog all these little critters, you know. And so we start putting them into these groups and columns, and we start measuring them based on the amount of protons and electrons and all this different stuff, because they they are so different in their attributes that you really can't organize them based on their attributes so much as you can their definitive structure, you know, and you can kind of guess the attributes based on their definitive structures, right? So like, am I losing you?
No, Mike, I don't know
Am I
what's
going
going
too
on.
far?
Things are a little. No, you're good on. You're good. The computer's glitching now a little bit. I'm trying to pull up a metals chart here that shows the different elements with the columns and the. But
Yeah, the
yeah,
periodic table.
keep going. Yeah,
So if you look at the periodic table, like it'll be measuring itself. Okay, like the first thing you'll notice is like hydrogen, right? Which is a a proton and electron with no neutron, right? And the hydrogen's kind of like unique. Like you don't really throw that in. It's its own little group in a way, because it's pretty neat. But after that, you'll notice that like you'll start reading from left to right, top to bottom, right? Left to right, top to bottom. And if you start looking at that periodic table, you'll notice right away there's an increase in its atomic mass. Its proton, neutron, electron weights, right? It's atomic mass, and and so you'll notice they're getting heavier. So you can have a heavier element, you can have a heavier element, but it still not be even as dense. And that just has to do because, oh my goodness, this is where my knowledge starts stretching a little bit. But this has to do with your shells and your subshells and your orbitals, okay? Because each shell or orbital, there could be, all right, hold on. There's orbitals within each shell. A shell is kind of like an onion layer, if you will, okay? And these are different states of energy. And so as each shell fills with electrons, okay, it carries with it a certain ability to either share or not share energy, you know, and it can either take or it can give. It can accelerate energies, and this is kind of like where catalytic metals start coming into play, because really the only thing, if I understand this correctly, really the only thing that's really important to us at the end of the day is your outermost shell, okay? And they can have different amounts of shells, you know, like hydrogen has one shell. It's one orbital, one shell, right? Because it only has one freaking electron, you know? And but as you jump up to like 5 shells, your inner shell will fill with 2 electrons, and then which leaves you a remainder of 3. And electrons will pair, but they like to be away from each other also at the same time. Okay, they don't like to like really stick with each other so much, but when they come in contact, they will pair. And so you'll have an extra electron now, maybe, that can come or go with the metal. So, like, for example, you look at Mercury, and Mercury's pretty full. Its outermost shell is full of electrons. And so whenever Mercury is next to Mercury, there's really no sharing or exchange going on between these outermost shells. And so therefore it weakly grabs itself on the way by, or weakly exchanges energies on the way by, and they never grab each other to start making that crystal formation that we would know. And so like metals, wow. There was a reason I was going down this, was just to explain, I guess, really that when you're following that periodic table, it changes from each one to the other because there's a lot of different forces going on the quantum scale of things. You know, quantum doesn't just mean tiny. It's about time and this instant translations of energies, and energies grabbing and separating and exchanging and speeds, and like you put more power into an electron, just kind of like a moon orbiting the Earth, give it a little bit more energy, and now that moon's going to orbit Earth in possibly a greater circumference. You know, it could be a greater circumference in that.
Yeah, that's
field.
No, well, that's crazy. I mean, that's going quite a ways into it. As far as just, you know, bringing it down to a very basic level.
Basic level. Let's look at. I'd like to look. Let's just talk iron. I mean, iron's our go-to big daddy example of everything we need to know about metallurgy in a lot of ways.
Okay, let's hear
it. Well, you know, because we're all familiar with, you know, the transition of iron into stainless steel. You know, and you know, you add in some nickel and aluminum, and then you add in, and then you start adding in chromium, and you start adding in all these different, you know, alloying metals, and these atoms are living between each other. You know, they're living in the same house now. You know, the house is going to operate differently with 2 different people in the room than compared to one, right? And so, you know, you look at like nickel's a great hardener, you know, and it'll harden, it'll make things harder, more heat resistant, You know, like early jet turbines were mostly like iron, nickel, and carbon. you know, there wasn't a lot to them. But that nickel in there all of a sudden, so they would end up using like mostly a nickel. And then they'd introduce the iron. You see, because it could resist deformation at higher temperatures.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I think. So. I think a big thing that I think is interesting, and knowing if you knew metallurgy, it would be a lot better, to know that and for investment purposes. But beings were kind of on the
You
edge
know,
of this.
when we make these rhenium alloys, all of a sudden, now the rhenium's capable of greater temperatures than it was before the alloy. And the iron in there never would have been capable of those temperatures without extreme deformation. And here's rhenium allowing like resistance to like thermal shock and creep deformation. And so you would want to like be talking about, like, I don't know what you would call them, alloying ratios or saturation levels, maybe.
Yeah. Um. So yeah. So I think that the era that we're coming into. And yeah, before I get into that, 888 says someone say nickel, and yes, we can get pure nickel now. I do have a good connection on that. I do believe nickel is excited about that, and if anyone else wants to get their hands on some pure 395 nickel, let me know. I also have 4 nines copper. And these are cut into about 2 ounces a piece for $1. So that's much better than you'll get your average rounds for. But yeah, I think with where we're at, where we're going into this commodity boom, and I think that we've been, we're at the height of our metallurgy, and where everything is suppressed or purchased easily with just paper, and so I think it's about as suppressed as we're going to get, and as our paper keeps devaluing, these commodities are going to start going the opposite direction, obviously. And I think some of these alloying metals like rhenium that are going to be really important for jet engines and these things that it's used for. And like we say, if we don't have lots of access, I mean, there could be some extreme value to find in some of these other metals, not just silver and gold and copper, but some of these other unique metals. So I think we're in a unique time in history. And so if you could take what you knew, like I know that you're getting ready to kind of kick off something in the with new metals and new ideas, and you've got a whole array of metal there on your desk. I myself have a pretty good array as compared to a lot of people who might have silver or gold. And so what are some other metals that you are looking at that maybe your metallurgical mind helps you to understand, that helps you to see the value in it?
Well, let me follow this with a disclaimer. Let me proceed this with a disclaimer. Unless you got some of this sitting on standby,
Yeah.
just good old fashioned silver.
Yep.
Unless you got some gold sitting on standby.
Yep.
Unless you got some platinum sitting on standby, you really shouldn't be stepping into this, because these are like, I don't want to be insulting to proper investors, But this is kind of like your starting investment metal portfolio is silver, gold, copper, platinum, right?
Yep.
So, but this is where you learn the basics. Okay. Now, once you get beyond the basics and you've figured out like, okay, what makes this valuable? This stuff is rare. It's difficult to come by. It's difficult to process, extract, refine, takes man hour. And now you understand the core principles of money and what makes metal valuable. You can start looking at other things and saying, all right, what about here? Let's start with tantalum, just because I'm a big fan of tantalum right now. I got niobium, tantalum, I got some other stuff. Here, let me go to the camera. Okay. Here's some tantalum. These are about 13 grams a piece right now. These about 13 grams each, okay? Roughly. What was I leading about this? What makes it valuable? Oh, yeah. So for every 1 ounce of tantalum that's produced, you are looking at somewhere between 3 and 5 ounces of gold produced. Okay? We're not talking about natural occurrence in the world. Okay? Because, I'm not so sure what the exact figures are, but I know production-wise, what we actually produce here in the world, for every 1 ounce of tantalum, you're going to get 3 to 5 ounces of gold to produce. So that means this is 3 to 4 times more rare on the market than your gold is, right?
Yeah.
Well, kind of same thing for your niobium. You're looking at it again, another you're looking at probably 1 to 3, probably somewhere close to 3 ounces of gold for every 1 ounce of niobium. But this is cheap right now. But this is the cheap one right now.
Niobium, that's naturally purple like that?
No, this is, you can change the color here. This is there we go. This is its natural color. There we are. See, it's like a real steely kind of a gray. It's a little bit dark almost.
Yeah.
This is its natural color, and using electricity, you can start changing the color. So the longer you leave it under charge, it'll kind of change the colors, because it's the oxide that's the color. It's forming an oxide.
Okay.
Is what's happening. It's
yeah, that's that purple.
burning.
Purple you get in a good toned coin can be that same thing, I suppose, huh?
Yep. And in fact, they have some niobium. Niobium's really respected, even in the coin world. They have some niobium coins out there. Like some really special series coins and stuff. But they've really kind of given niobium a real treat. But here's the deal. Niobium's more rare than gold. Tantalum is more rare than gold.
Yeah.
Here we go. Make sure it doesn't fall out. All right. Tellurium. This stuff's crazy rare, dude.
That's cool.
This stuff's way more rare than gold. Now, it doesn't have quite the application in life that maybe we're using gold with, right? But it still has very important, it still has a lot of important qualities that are still used today in a lot of, I want to say it's like a laser lensing and a lot of like tinting and some electrical work and stuff like that. Somebody will have to fill me in the background. But see, I don't have to be a complete nerd about this to know that, look, this is way, way, way more rare than gold. And we use it. And this world is getting bigger every day. And stuff is getting more expensive every day. So just like my gold, my silver, my platinum, the rarity itself carries value. You see what I mean? And this is part of what I'm getting at here, is that all of these, here's your niobium, more niobium, here's some indium. another extremely crucial metal to have in our world.
Why?
Come on.
Why is indium crucial?
Um, Indium's used in like we use indium to make like a lot of different types of oxides, as an example. So like for your touch screens, it's like indium tin mixtures and like some other different alloys and stuff that form oxides that we use for our touch screens, we use for our flat screens, we use for like solar panels, we use it for wetting, like mirroring.
And how
We use
rare is
it
it?
again. Well, this one is kind of it's debatable. If you ask me, I'm going to tell you this is more rare than gold. Probably, I don't know. I'd say comfortably 10 times more rare than gold. This is me
Oh,
speaking,
really?
but it could be more. Oh, yeah. And
Okay.
this is, again, cheap compared to gold.
Yeah. Like
You know,
how many ounces is that tube roughly, or an ounce or two or something?
this is 100 grams.
100 grams. So yeah, that's
This is 100 grams, so it's a
33,
little
close
over
to
3
4.
ounces.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, and, you know, you're going to probably pick it up somewhere between $60 and $100 right now,
Okay.
depending on the form and source. But a lot of these metals aren't tracked like gold and silver. These aren't public share markets.
Yeah.
These are natural monopolies.
Yep.
I better be careful. This is partially toxic,
Okay.
which is another reason you shouldn't just jump into just grabbing any weird metal.
Right.
You know, this will probably not. Just limited touch will make me smell like garlic. I probably shouldn't overhandle it.
Wow.
You
Okay.
know,
That's interesting. It has the same off gassing as osmium. Then the osmium
well,
powder. What? It smells the same. Is it the same type of? Are you getting?
no,
Is
this
that
will
the
make
same
me
chemical?
smell like it. I'll sweat the garlic smell if I touch this. Or,
So is that the same chemical reaction that's happening with the osmium sponge that's happening off that?
no, osmium's the os. Well, and it's not even the sponge that does it. Technically speaking, the sponge is actually pretty stable in itself. Like theoretically speaking, it's just susceptible to environmental change. Okay, so the tetroxide, it's like kind of like a super irritant, is what happens. This is different. This is like it gets in your bloodstream and there's like it starts catalyzing stuff in you. You know, so I don't know for sure all the dangers of this, but like osmium tetroxide, it's going to act like a super irritant, and it's going to want to like your body's going to want to like provide a lot of fluid to like your lungs and stuff, and you'll kind of just asphyxiate from irritation,
Wow.
the tetroxide.
Huh.
And it's like a pulmonary kind of a thing, not incredibly.
I wonder if some people are more susceptible to it than others, or is it like a pretty universal thing?
No, it'd be pretty universal because really osmium itself is stable. It's a stable element, and so it's it's going to be pretty safe. It's actually really safe by itself. You know, if you don't eat the stuff, don't rub it on your eyes, and don't smoke it, you're probably going to be okay. You know, like, but yeah. So it just like again because it's catalyzing everything around it because it's such a good catalyst. It's going to catalyze. It's going to catalyze everything around it. You see, and that's what causes the problem. It's the body's reaction to all this new stuff being catalyzed because you got like iron and stuff in your blood. You know, think about it. You got all these different heavy metals in your blood, and then you introduce a catalyst. You see what I mean? Like, that's what makes it dangerous.
Hmm.
So, but in itself, like touching it, as long as you don't like press it into your skin, I suppose, you know, and that's why you do want to like know what you're doing and which metals are safe. But
Yeah.
like neodymium, indium. In fact, indium's so safe I could chew on it. It's so safe I could chew on it. You could use it as a dental metal, like to fill in cavities or something, or to hold some dentures in, um, to cap teeth.
Is it soft? It looks soft.
It is crazy soft. It is. Here's a 100-gram chunk of it. It's kind of taken some abuse. Like, look, there's some bite marks.
Really?
But yeah, watch it just wow, crazy soft. And there we go. And
so
it bonds really well to everything. You use it for gaskets. They use it for gaskets, silicones. They use it for oxides. They use it for like Gallistan is like a gallium indium tin mixture, and they use it for like superconductors and like thermal, like because it turns into a liquid and it stays a liquid even at like ultra cold temperatures. And so but pretty much if we didn't have access to indium, all technological life as we know would just stop. you know and someday, if this ever corrects, man, we could be looking at $100,000 kilo easy. $150,000, $200,000 per kilo of this. And right now you could probably pick up a kilo for $800.
Interesting.
Sorry, were you trying to ask something?
No, just kind of marveling about it, thinking about it.
See,
what was that? What was that you? So that is that indium that you were just holding?
That was indium. We got.
And how rare is indium? You said like 8 times rarer than gold or something? Is that right? Roughly.
Like I said, that it's because it's not like publicly traded, publicly reported. There are all these like little natural monopolies running around, a whole bunch of natural monopolies. It's hard to track the figures of some of these, but yeah, I'd say pretty comfortably at least 10 times more rare than gold. I'd say that comfortably. There's some that would put it far rarer than gold, far more rare than gold. And that gallium you're holding, is that gallium?
Yep.
Yeah, that's another one that's it's pretty easy to. It's not crazy rare, but because of like extraction processes and what it takes to get it out, it becomes rare, and it's super valuable.
Really, yeah. So Gold Maple says it's his favorite, and I've never actually had it out of this tube that I'm holding. I'm thinking about taking it out and putting it in my hand because I've seen it melt into your hand. I think it was Spectacular did that on his channel one time, and I seen it, and I was like, whoa. And then he was touching it to some aluminum, and you were making gas. You were lighting lighters by mixing gallium and aluminum pop can tabs, right? And you were lighting
with water.
And
with water on top. You put a bunch of gallium on top of your aluminum, and it'll eat the aluminum, and then you add water on top of that, and that aluminum will turn into an oxide, and it'll release hydrogen, and you can collect or use the hydrogen. And then you pour off the aluminum oxide, which is like a white junk up on top. It'll be a white junk on or in the water. You pour that off, and you have your gallium remaining at the bottom, clean and clear, ready to use again. Sustainable usage.
Yeah, and you can just he just took a bottle and those metals and some water, and he was lighting a lighter, or the mixture. But yeah, you should go check out. He did a live on that, or a video or something, where he was using gallium and pop can tabs, which is just whatever, aluminum,
Aluminum with a little bit of tin, I think.
Okay. And it was gassing, and it was putting an off gas, and he was lighting it on fire. I thought that was pretty sweet. So yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking about taking this out and seeing what it's like, but I worry about getting it back in the plastic container without losing it everywhere.
You, you know those cutting boards, like those silicone cutting boards,
Yeah.
or yeah, those the kind of hard ones. That would probably be some good stuff. Did you say Frisky was in the chat?
Yeah, he's in the chat. Yes, sir.
Oh, cool. We'll tell. Hey, what up, Frisk? I'm all. Tell him I said hi. All stupid. Yeah. What? Hey, Frisk. What do you think would be the best material to keep the gallium from wetting? Like, what could we recover the most of our gallium with? Dude, you'd only lose such a small portion of it through wetting. Like, even on your hand, it would be a very small portion. Like, you'd be able to get it back in there with any kind of like funneling. You
Okay,
know,
so
it's
if
heavy.
I
It's metal, bro. It's metal. It's going to move like molten metal
wow, that's
because it
crazy.
is molten metal. Technically speaking, it's molten metal
What do you
in your
think,
hand.
man? Should I see if I can get this out of the tube? Will it be hard to get out? Like, do I just hold it in my hand tight and it will melt and pour out, or what?
Yeah, if just get it hot enough to, I, oh, what was the temperature? It's like 80 something degrees, I want to say.
Oh, this is gonna be
All
cool.
right, here we go. I'm in chat. Frisky says, put it under hot water and it will pour out.
Okay, cool.
It will wet almost everything, but when it's solid, it'll be easy to collect. Hot water. Yeah, yeah, it's again, that's kind of like we're kind of seeing it destructive to our means, but that's actually one of its benefits. It's part of what makes it useful. You
So
know, it
let's so
wets
explain
everything.
that. So tell me about that. Explain that to me, my aerospace nerd.
Wetting means as a liquid, it's going to adhere to its surface and will leave behind a small amount of residue or um, uh, dried
Oh, yeah.
gallium. Oh, did you do it? Did you do it?
It got yeah. I held it and it separated itself from the plastic so that it was moving in there. So it just dropped right out. Oh wow! Oh
Oh,
yeah! Wow!
cool. Go
Look at
big
that!
screen. Go big screen. Go big screen. Oh,
Oh no!
no.
I don't want to
Be
get it
careful touching
everywhere.
your keyboard, bro.
That's what
Do it
I'm
with like a pencil or something.
afraid of.
Don't
Oh,
get that in your keyboard.
oh yeah! It's like it's melting like ice cream from my
You know, I've
fingers.
been wanting to do like hollow plastic molds and then like, selling some like play like learn to pour kits because it's gonna act like just like any molten metal, so it would be like a safe and easy low temperature way to like learn to pour, you know, because you could use the gallium for that. You just heat it up, nice and warm. You make your pour, let it cool down, and you it'd be a good way to learn how to like pour other metals
Huh?
once you
That's
got
cool.
beyond that. Did it wet your hand at all?
Well, I got like little traces of it, kind of here and there in a couple places where I was holding on to it. But now, if that got into my computer, what's it gonna? It's just gonna short things out, right?
Well, it'll eat aluminum and titanium. And so if you have like aluminum, I don't know, like maybe like a keyboard frame or something in there, and it's got any like I mean it could probably land on your aluminum and probably be fine for the most part. But if there was a scratch in your aluminum and it got in there, it would make it brittle and hard. It would just like where it would just fall apart,
Hmm.
it would crumble.
So
Like you could
is
eat like
that
an entire engine block with what you got. Easy.
so is that is that part of the process that you were talking about the positive and the negative like is it so when it connects with the pop can or whatever, it eats it. Is it taking away positive or like what's happening there that it would eat another metal? Like that's crazy.
Well, it's creating an alloy, and so it's weakening. I guess it would just be weakening the bonds that exist in the aluminum, because it's creating like it would be an interstitial defect, I guess, or a replacement defect. I get like a replacement, a spot defect. It would be a replacement defect and an interstitial defect. So yeah, it would be like loosening the bonds and like trying to like have a chemical reaction, I guess. It's a reactive metal and oxidize the aluminum. Yeah, it's oh man, some of this chemistry still gets me. You really got to know your physics.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm gonna be right back and wash my hands now. But
yeah, hot water, buddy. So basically, it's just getting it to react. It lets it react quicker with its environment. You could think of it that way, I guess. It kind of speeds the process up, maybe. It can get past the normal passivation of aluminum and causes it to react. Same if you heat aluminum up too much. Thank you, Frisky. Yeah, guys, that's why I gave you the disclaimer about the caveman and the chemistry lab, man. There's a lot of this stuff. Like, look, guys, these guys that work with these metals, like this high-level metallurgy, these guys, they dedicate their entire lives to physics and chemistry and equipments and materials and processes and years and years and years and years of education and field time, actually performing these. You really got to dedicate to really come to that high level education point, like we're all going to understand some basics in a little bit. We can all come to that, but man, there's just so much to it. Physics is a great place to start, you guys. If you want to understand metallurgy a little bit better, like a little bit more intuitively, learn your physics, your basic core physics, like learn about electricity, learn about, anodes and cathodes, and learn about positive and negatively charged particles and environmental changes, because again, like there are people that dedicate their whole freaking lives to like a couple alloys of aluminum and making it badass. Like nitinol or nitinol. It's what is that? It's like an aluminum. No, it's like a titanium nickel alloy, and it's got like, somebody dedicated like a lot of time to just creating that one metal and then selling that one metal. And it's kind of like that little pie chart whenever you're playing your video games, you only get so many attributes. You can either run fast or you can hit hard, and you only get so much time to dedicate to any of it. Right. So that's kind of like why me and B are both very careful about making this point clear. You have to have your foundations right first. You got to have your pillars of wealth set up. You need to get your land, your food, your water, your metal, your basic metals. These are the ones you can go down to the store and get rid of. These are the ones grandma and grandpa know about. These are the ones you got that one weird neighbor that you never trusted before, but all of a sudden you understand what a badass he was. Right. But then you get into these, because these are speculative investments. At the end of the day, it's a very speculative market. You're trusting that certain technologies are going to be moving forward. You're trusting that we're going to keep using phones. We're going to keep using laptops and touchscreens. That's where these start coming in. Yeah. It's not the same kind of market, but it doesn't make it a bad market. It just comes with a different set of timing, a different target customer, and the same way you put into work shopping this out and finding the best place to sell it, it's the same kind of work you got to put into these when it comes time. The only difference between these and these is these are a lot more rare than these, and so rarer metal, rarer customer. It's good. The more rare the metal, the more rare the customer is going to be.
Right. Yeah, that's so interesting reading the chat and listening to you talk. And, this is an interesting comment. There is borium, named after Niels Bohr, who predicted how electrons were distributed in an atom around the nucleus like planets around the sun. And everything else that you've been talking about, how there's a give and a take. There's like, the more you know about reality, the more you realize how our life have these same effects on us. Like, everything is within. So I don't know. That's amazing. It's just mind blowing how some of the alloys work, and the relationship with the laws within metals to life, and it's like, wow.
B, right now in this chat, we've got some powerhouse. We really do got some super intelligent powerhouse alternative investment metal seekers here. Everybody in this chat knows what the hell they're talking about, and every single one of us is involved in alternative investment metals.
Yeah.
So when people challenge us, because I know we all get it's a niche market. It's a niche market. Dude, I am so done. Let me make this clear. We are not in a niche market. We are in an elite market. And I'm sorry that your gold hasn't caught up to the rarity of tantalum. And it never freaking will. Gold's always going to be a beginner's purchase compared to tantalum and niobium, compared to osmium. Osmium's a freaking stud.
Right.
Osmium's a dang. I loved your response. Oh, dude, I got to clap for you real quick here. Hold on. All right. Because, dude, I loved your response. Somebody questioned you the other day, and they were like, aren't you worried about like how rare it is, and about a limited market, and like it took you like one breath and 2 seconds to go, nope. Because there is, even if it is a limited market, even if it's a limited market, it's still not a small market. There's enough people out there. There's enough word out there about all of these different metals that you're just going to be hanging out with a different group of people. That's really, at the end of the day, you're only different. You're going to be looking at, your entry costs. You're going to be looking at your exit timing, and you're going to be looking at your target consumer. That's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with all these. Like, people like Nickel have been way ahead of the curve for a long time. He's been stacking copper a long time. And now, you know what? He's been doing it long enough. He has seen the benefit. But he's still speculating on a time worse than the one we're in.
Yes. And he knows. Big respect to Triple Eight the Great, formerly known as Nickel Stacking. He when I put up nickel, he jumped on it. When I put up the copper 4 9s, 2 ounces for $1, he jumped on it. Like, he knows the markets. He knows what's good. Knows where what's valuable, where he's getting a deal. and yeah, he's been tracking it for such a long time. So big respect to him. And now you got to say, I remember just a couple years ago, people were saying, "Oh, you'll never silver will never see $40. You guys need to quit." You know, getting on about that. Well, I guess we're at 39. I guess maybe I should be careful, but
Oh,
here we are at 40 2 years later.
dude, I remember people challenging 25.
Right?
I still remember them challenging 25. That $35 metal was just ridiculous. We won't see that for 10 years, you know? Sorry. It's
Yeah.
just,
Yep.
I
Yep.
think the culture's gotten into a habit of just like, we listen, we rattle it in our head back and forth, and then we let it fall out of our mouth. We don't really like investigate, or discern what is good or bad information. We just kind of like, hey, that's information. I have information. Let me give, like, it's social currency, you know?
Yeah.
And no, you know, uh, one of my best buddies bought his house with rhodium. Okay. And he bought it when it was cheap. And, and there at that time, the time he would have been buying it, if I remember correctly, there was a lot of skepticism about rhodium, way back when it was like cheap before its big spike. And then it did it. Then it did its big spike. And my buddy went down and he probably took 20% on his, he probably took a 20% hit on his rhodium, but he still bought his house with rhodium because he saw what we're seeing now. He saw it way back then. And do you think that was his last purchase of a precious of a valuable or critical metal?
Yeah.
No, the dude's still buying valuable critical metals because this is gonna, like the tantalum, dude. Think about this just for a second. I want you all to think about like what makes for a good investment. Okay, when we're talking long-term investments, this is not a quick get rich quick or a quick flip. This is not going to save your life overnight. Okay, let me make that really clear. But if this ever corrects, we could be looking at over $300,000 a kilo, compared to the, $800 a kilo now, or more. Probably more if all you're getting is a kilo. And but like, look, it's every 1 ounce of this we're pumping out. I can't stress this enough. 3 to 5 ounces of this,
Mm-hmm.
which means this should bare minimum be 3 to 5 times the value of this. And
Yeah.
that's the
Well.
starting point, not to mention our consumption rates in a modern world. We're probably using this, like in your phone, you've probably got 100 times more um, tantalum than you do gold in your phone. 100 times more in your
Yeah.
phone. That's a times 100 consumption rate with a times 3 to 5 production increase. So you times it by 3 to 5 just to correct for the production difference, right? And then you times it by 100 to calculate in your consumption values. And now all of a sudden, supply and demand demands that this be over $300,000 a kilo. And
Yeah.
that's how you make a difference in your life.
Yeah, and that's what I want to point out right now. And of course, everybody here knows this. Anybody stumbling onto it, just because it's rarer than gold doesn't make it valuable. But its use case is your intake is one thing, but what's your output, right? So if you're constantly using it up, which makes the era that we're in so interesting, I think, and one of the reasons that I put together this talk is because I think there is a lot of chance right now in that I think we're at this separating point where we're going into this commodity boom or commodity uh, era, and a lot of these metals that we're kind of taking for granted and using them up, and not yet realizing, the amount of value that is in that product. It's just a byproduct, so we're using it, we're not out. But if we go into a need for that product, and it's, there's no stockpiles, and the mines aren't running for what, you some of these metals can have, could have crazy values to them. And it's just because we're at this unique time where we're not paying attention to what real true value is. We don't understand probably a lot of the alloys that we're going to need in our futuristic world that we're moving into.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, just because it's rarer, very rare, doesn't make it valuable. But if you have something that's very rare, that has very unique characteristics that are going to be needed into the future where we're moving into, then yeah, there's explosive potential there in a lot of areas, I think. So,
Yep. I
and
think
then,
we're seeing it right now with platinum. We're starting to see the beginning movement of that. That we need we need it. We use it. We use it way more than gold. you know, and with that consumption becomes, it's again supply and demand. If we're not sucking it up, then that means nobody's demanding it. If nobody's demanding it, then you can't sell it. If you can't sell it, then the price goes down, right?
yeah,
These are, and kind of like the tellurium, right? This is probably one of the most rare elements I have on my table right now. One of them, one of the most rare elements we have on planet Earth, like at least bare minimum in production, right? That we produce 1 ounce. This is a relatively limited product. I mean, they only need so much of this to do the job, you know, and it's only in a couple places out there. This is not going to have the price performance that indium will, or tantalum or niobium. Here's some tantalum, also known as columbium back in the day. Yeah, we got tantalum here. Anyways, but no, you're making a really, really, really strong point that rarity does not equal value.
right,
I really like that you made that point, because like here's something. Pokemon cards, right?
right.
You know, guys recognize that one? Stacker Social.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, isn't that cool? But what's the value on this? You see what I mean? It's probably not the same value as that Pokemon card everybody else is after for 2.1 million or whatever.
Right.
It's rare as shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it doesn't make it it doesn't make it quote unquote intrinsically valuable.
Right, for sure. Yeah.
But it's damn valuable to me, and you'd have to pay me a lot of money to take it off my hands,
Yeah. 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 And another point to bring out right now that I think is unique, that I think is, again, quite valuable, that a lot of people, I don't think, quite have their finger on, and I could be wrong here myself, but we pretty much have all the above ground gold that we've mined throughout the years, and it's in a vault somewhere. However, the silver does get used up, and a lot of like they say now, again, I'm not a geologist, but they say it's an epithermal, meaning right at the top surface of mines is where silver is often right up towards the soil line, or up high up in a mine close to the surface of the earth. So a lot of our big easy silver mines have already been gotten to, and
Yeah.
so and with as much silver as we're in 5 going on 6 year deficit. So depending on how much stockpile we have left, and we know that the government's been selling in our stockpile into the market for quite some time, even after the 1980 peak. and crash. They kept selling it into the market to keep it smashed down. So, we might be low on stockpile, and that's going to be where there's so much more value, because the gold, yes, it's really valuable right now because so many people are putting their value and their storage value within gold to preserve their wealth, as they should. um, but as the silver, as that starts to happen in silver as well, plus it's being used in industry, and we're already in a deficit. That's you can see, the possibility of explosiveness there. So
Well, and we're having that quote unquote we're in the middle of a quote unquote currency war, and I think we should kind of address that in a minute.
yeah, yeah.
But
Go ahead.
the along with that is kind of comes back to where me and you've been trying to point at tonight, that like what I call the tab economy, the tangible asset based economy. Like, as we, it's not just as we're fighting over materials and supplies, we're also fighting on what determines value. We're in the middle of that fight too. This is what the BRICS fight is about. This is what the BRICS contention is right now, is that they're trying to determine, everybody's scrambling for resources right now, but nobody has decided on what the standard of world value is. You know what I mean? Because to each nation, there's like, again, like you've been mentioning, to China, dude, silver and gold is worth way more to China right now than it is to us.
Mm-hmm.
And they're acting like it. They're willing to pay that extra bit, and this is where, and it appears that China has decided, well, silver and gold is how they're going to base their monetary values. So not only are we fighting over materials, we're fighting over the definitions of money right now, of what is valuable, what is money, what is security, you know?
Yeah, and I think, like, we talked a bit earlier, and I was saying, that yes, like, I think Jim Rickards has a book out there that says we're gonna have currency wars, but another way of saying that is we're gonna have commodity wars, because
Yep.
we have been, for all of life, we've had a value for value trade mechanism, and that's why it became silver, gold, and copper, is because those were natural, best use case, value preservation, purchase purchasing power, XYZ. Anyone will accept it everywhere and anywhere. So for all of our history, we've been on that, and now for this past 80 years or whatever it's been since we've left our silver and our gold and our copper, we've been on this paper. Oh, we'll trust that we'll keep honest books and we won't print money out of thin air to go fight wars and to build things that we want built, and
The trust system.
right, the trust system. And so now that we've pretty much blown out the trust system, all that's going to be left is true value, true real things, goods and services. And goods, commodities, is going to be the thing, the currency. Now, no, we don't want to trade with bushels of wheat, but you do want something of reality, something real, something that you can trust, and that is value up in itself, not a derivative. And that's, I guess, what you would say is we live in a derivative world, or have for this past 180-year era, or whatever it's been.
That's a good point you're making, bro. I'm glad you brought that in.
Yeah.
That difference between real value Well, like, because some of those are, they're such a future value about them, and we're really counting on all these futures. We like the bond markets as an example. It's that trust. Like we were talking earlier, that one of the things about this trust system is that when we went from gold as the standard measure into trust, they were a little bit more willing to entertain that because the Americans had such a strong work engine and production engine at the time. It was easy to see the futures. These people are cranking out, skyscrapers and bridges and interstates and mines and products, but we're not doing that anymore. And there is no futures. They don't see futures in our economy. They don't see futures in our production. They don't see futures in our mining. The trust has been eroded. And like you said, now they're calling it back. They're like, look, I know you promised that you could, that this would be worth gold someday again, but you never returned back to gold. You don't even offer this exchange anymore. And now I'm supposed to trust that your economy is going to prevail as well? No, I'm calling in my silver. I want physical delivery. I want physical delivery of my gold, my silver, and my platinum now. And that's what they're screaming at us because we're not backing it up with anything, And I think we're going to be correcting some of that with the natural gas market, and we still have some really strong technology markets. But at the end of the day, we are dependent. Oh, that was another point we talked about, our dependency. That we can't do it alone. You can't replace these markets. When we're talking about some of these rarer metals.
Yeah.
You can't replace. We literally, like, I hate it. Like, I'm really getting frustrated when people are like, well, when there's a weakness, the market will prevail. Like, no, dude. Again, we can't replace some of these markets. We literally don't have some of these metals, literally. And if we do not, it's not in any mineable or retrievable amounts.
Yeah.
We don't even have the money for the infrastructure.
Right, and I think we've been taking that for granted as a country because I'll just print up a bunch more. Just give me another trillion, I'll buy it, And they're like, okay, so they give you some, But we're getting to that point where they're like, we don't want your trillions, And then boom, it's gonna come like a, you're getting. I mean, because now we've not all that hitting power. When that hitting power, no matter what level you put, they don't want it. Now not only. I mean, I don't even know how to explain how far you fall on when you lose that. I mean, you go from being able to have this leverage of just printing it up out of nothing to having to go back out and find a rock for value or anything of value, right?
Yeah. And where does the government turn in times of war? To its people. And now they're going house to house, fucking pulling teeth for gold fillings. I know that's kind of a dramatic, but that's kind of like what it's like, Yeah, Nickel says these metals are needed for military, and that's another thing that people don't really consider about futures. We have a lot of futures intangible because our military has a strategic domestic purchase plan. We strategically purchase these metals. If the American economy is consuming it, then that means our government is consuming it at somewhere between 5 and 10% of whatever we consume. Our military does too. So the more we buy, the more metals we buy, the more our military buys, the more our government's buying, the more the businesses are buying. We have a future in it, that's just under the surface. They don't advertise it because they don't want people realizing that our investments are being matched by our own government somewhere between 5 and 10% a year. That's fantastic news. You can count on that for your gold investment. You're at least going to see 5 or 10%, you know, because our government's literally consuming that too, you know?
Yeah, I wish they would do it in for stockpiling, but I'm not sure that they're not just using it up with, you know. But yeah, no, it's better than not. That's for sure. You know.
Yeah.
Um.
What do we got going?
Well,
Strategic metals are in the budget, and you can look that up. Yeah.
yeah. So I thought, you know, would be good to just kind of touch on some of these things, and I think we're in a unique time and place for those, like you know, with the some of the understanding of you know, metallurgy and the properties of metal. If you had the mindset kind of that I do on the monetary system, if you had the mindset to go along with that of, you know, what makes these metals rare, or what makes them very unique, or why we're going to you need that particular metal because of its particular properties. I mean, if you knew those things well, it would really help you to better invest. So I know almost nothing about it, and I appreciate you coming up and sharing what you know about it. And you know, if anybody else out there wants to come up and share their knowledge, I would love it. I think it's something that we need in our community is to understand, you know, the unique traits that make silver and gold valuable for thousands of years. And now that we're in the position that we're in, what other metals that we have that are we're kind of taking advantage of so far without paying attention to how valuable they are for ease of access to get to them, and what other investments could be there. So another thing we'll have to discuss to go along with this is, you know, there could be hiccups some people have pointed out in the comments, and I agree with. You know, how are we going to be able to go into the future still dealing with these rare metals? And you know, if they try to go on to a tokenized system, and you know, just as I'm understanding money and revalue or real value and all this stuff, I feel like they're trying to take that away completely to where you're just on a Chuck E. Cheese token, and it's a you can or can't do certain things depending on whether they like you doing them or not, you know.
Right.
So
You know, that is kind of a challenge we do have coming our way. Is
yeah,
that at some point, like, look, you can have all the metal of the world, but if you don't sell any of it, you never damn got a dollar to feed yourself. You know, you got to sell this at some point to somebody, and it's going to have to. So you're either going to have to find somebody that will straight up trade you the food for the metal, you know, or
mm,
you're going to have to find a currency that they do accept to switch into, you know. And that's, I think that's our biggest problems in the tangible world, is how are we going to financially communicate with the world around us when we're in the tangible and they're in the complete opposite,
yeah,
in zeros and ones. And
yeah,
that's the real hard one coming up that we really haven't answered. You know, we've gotten close. You know, we've gotten close with like goldbacks and stuff. You know, like we're kind of trying to answer. You know, we're trying to like legislate an
right,
answer.
right. We
Like,
got
who was it that did that recent?
yeah, Missouri, I think it is, that just passed the gold and silver as payment in debt. So legal tender, which is a whole nother subject, going on to legal tender as opposed to already being lawful money. Again, wake up, people! But that's a tree that I don't know. I'm getting tired of barking out, but it's just an obvious thing for me that just kind of irks me all the time. But yeah, so hopefully, like, I think it is positive that we have these states that are repealing the purchasing tax that goes on precious metals, accepting it for payment, waking up to the fact, making reserves for their state in it. I mean, those are very big. I didn't think I would see that day, to be honest. And so to have 8 states, jump on board with that, I think is actually pretty promising. In that, hopefully, that will, if people are waking up to that point, hopefully they'll see to remain open to being able to use these things personally, like letting me go to the precious metal shop, purchase metal, and be able to sell it back into the market when I'm ready. And no matter what type of token is being used. So that's a big hurdle, but hopefully we'll remain good there. And for those of us who know, we can use our mind and our best bets to get the metals we think are going to be most useful, and our best move for where we can preserve our family's sustainability.
I think, like a lot of us that are involved in these alternative metals, these alternative investment metals, when we aim at this kind of culture, we really are leading the culture right now. We're ahead. Anybody that's sitting here talking about it or is in chat right now talking about it, you guys, like, have some peace upon you, in the sense that know that you're ahead of the wave right now. You're leading that edge. You're seeing what's coming before the rest of the world does. You are in the advantage zone right now. This is the moment where people are they're picking. This is an important split in the road right now that you have to decide. You have to recognize this as one of those catalyzing moments here. Like, the catalyst has already begun, and this flashpoint's already going. We're the the world is setting into place, and we see it clearly. We still got a little bit of malleability with our money. Like, I say it all the time. People hate me for saying it. I swear they do. But money, spend it while it's worth something. That's what I'm saying. Your currency, spend it while it's worth something, dude.
Yeah, currency. Yeah.
Spend it while it's damn worth something. You out of here, guys? Oh,
I'm not
Nickel,
sure
just
if
Nickel.
we've got some smoking him the peace pipe, so I'm not sure if he's piecing with his brothers or if he's actually piecing out. But I think a couple of people were wondering as well, so I think we're all still here. We were just digitally passing around the circle.
Yeah, dude, I don't want to let this conversation go right now. It just feels so important. Like, and again, I really want to stay on this, what I was saying for a second. Sure. Like, I want to just, like, bless everybody here, and say peace be upon you, because, guys, we saw it. We've all seen it. I know so many of you in here now. I've gotten to know you, and we've talked and we've discussed these things, and we've heard each other's opinions. And at the end of the day, guys, we've been right. This whole damn time, we've been right. And we're still right. And we're going to be right in the future. But right now, this is where we step in alignment with what we know to be true. We must live in alignment in this moment with what we know to be true. And what we know is true right now is the world's crashing, and we ain't got a damn thing we can do about it. We can't save the world this time, guys. you know? And thanks, Frisk. And we can't save the world this time. But what we can do is we can toss as many flotation devices out there as we can and keep people's heads from going underwater,
Yeah.
you know? And and you don't have to get stuck in the traditional loop. There are a lot of paths around this car wreck. There are a lot of roads. You don't have to take this road. It's a road we all know, but it's not the only road out there, and it's not the only road. Like, listen, when this starts here, let me say this: when this starts going crazy, when silver and gold start going crazy again, if they haven't already, you're not going to get out of it at the top of the market. You're not going to walk in there with 1,000 ounces of silver to your pawn shop on the world's greatest high of silver price, and let's say it jumps to $300 tomorrow. The first guy that walks in the door is getting a deal. The next guy that walks in the door, that the pawn shop's out of money. You see what I'm saying? And you're going to have something else in your arsenal. You know, some platinum, some palladium, some indium. You're going to have options. You know, maybe copper is going to be the big score when everybody's piled up on the silver and gold and nobody's buying it anymore, because they're all out of money. Well, all of a sudden that copper's worth something again. That's still a way to move.
Yeah, and maybe another analogy is instead of different roads, maybe we're all on the same road, but you can travel it in different cars. There's different cars out there to get us to the end of that road. So some of them are going to be little fast sprinters. Some of them are going to get better gas mileage. Some of them are, going to have more power or torque at certain times. And so, yeah, there's options out there. I want to bring up what Gold Maple is saying here, and I should be careful doing this. Kind of touchy, I suppose, but it says many Americans don't want to get entangled in foreign wars, but foreign wars help America preserve its influence over the world. And that's true. And it's been my point for a while is that, see, we've had influence over the world simply by letting our currency do our talking for us. The other countries, while we had that strong currency, they wanted to hold our dollars, and that gave us our influence over the world in trade and in talks and for all these different things. We had something people wanted. Now, when we've lost that, when people no longer want our paper, now we have nothing to except for to send our guns and our bombs and say you got to step in line or else. And that's why we see the BRICS just standing and not in warning, but just saying, hey, let's just freely trade amongst each other with real goods. And they're all signing off happily onto that paperwork because otherwise they have to deal with us and where we're at. And where we're at is not something good. We're trying to force people to take our dollar and devalue, it's, yeah. So that's kind of the issue that we're facing, indeed, one of the big issues anyway. So, but reality is going to win out in this war we're in. And just like all the other thousands of nations that have had empires and that have had their currencies devalued to nothing because of what we're experiencing, it's not like we're going to be some unique case where that's not happening. No, that's already playing out in real time. Whether the lockdown, surveillance stuff will come with it, that might be, a whole big thing to deal with, which is mostly where my frustration lies. But otherwise, I wouldn't really be that frustrated because I kind of think I understand a little bit. It doesn't take the pain away from it, but it helps so that kind of what's going on and why all the lies and deception and this and that. So,
I'm an isolate and insulate kind of a guy, coming into this world. That's been my technique I've been approaching. Let's I'm going to isolate, and I'm going to insulate myself. You know, be in the world, not of it, right? And one of the ways, and this goes back to what me and you say all the time, getting your foundations right. You know, I don't. I'll tell you what I don't deal with. I don't deal with bills in the mail every day. I don't deal with debt collectors coming to call. I don't deal with, uh, you know, police detectives showing up at my door to investigate crimes. I don't deal with any of that. You know why? Because I don't participate, and I don't need their electricity because I have it at my house. You know, I don't need a landlord because I bit the bullet and I bought a fifth wheel and a small chunk of land. I lowered, you know, the world would think I lowered my living standard by, choosing to live in a fifth wheel. But dude, my home right now is paid for. And so what I don't deal with is a landlord. What I don't deal with is a bunch of utilities. What I don't deal with is the law because I don't go out there and over socialize, and now, so when we're worried about like what's coming our way, for a lot of us that have been taking these initial steps, right? The silver, the gold, the platinums, and your other alternative metals. Every step you take towards this is one step away from reliance on modern society. It's one step away from that reliance on them. You can participate when you want, but when this just sits here, this isn't like this is a low input investment compared to the guy that decides he's going to hustle up street burritos every day. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, no offense to the guy hustling street burritos. Hopefully he's buying silver with his money, right? But but the point is that the only way you're going to do it is by having your foundations right. Where at the end of the day, what are they really going to come knocking on your door for? You see what I'm saying? Like, what business do they even have with you? Are you reliant upon your government? Then your government is probably going to be knocking on that door to check in, Yeah. But if you're not reliant on their money, if you don't need their banks, you'll never get a bill from the bank. You'll never have to worry about your card overdrafting. You see what I'm saying? If you don't have a bank card, you don't deal with the bank card issues. Sorry, that's a long-winded way of making a very simple point. Choose what you even want to frickin' deal with. And then
and the problem is when you start putting it's the wrong time to put your trust into the government right now. Like,
right.
If it was at the beginning of the era, then some relying completely on them but right now when things are going to start to shut down, and then we're used to putting our trust in the government because you go to the store and everything you need is right there. And suddenly when it gets to the actual disaster and FEMA shows up, they show up 2 months late and they go about it all slow and wrong, and they usually just cause more problems than they get fixed. And it's at the end of that cycle is where you get the most corruption, the most problems, and it's just not the time to put your trust into them right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, funny how that word's kind of come up a lot this evening. Trust. Right.
Yeah. Well, that's what this is supposed to be. That's what money is, in a sense, is that trusted value, that trusted purchasing power for a long. Again, it's noble. It doesn't corrode. It's going to be stay in its same state and have its same purchasing power for thousands of years, because of its unique characteristics. And that way you're getting a value when you're getting it. And that's why, that value system worked up until we went off of real reality value and said, oh, just trust us with this fake reality stuff. And it's like that works for a while until it doesn't. And we're coming up on the it doesn't part.
Yeah. I mean, you know, look, at some point, we're all going to have to say yes or no to something, and that's the scariest moment of all of this is like trying to figure out when they're going to fucking bring us to the line, you know? But until then, until that moment happens, let's not worry about that future because right now we have the ability to act. And ever since I started acting like this,
Yep.
Instead of dealing with, you know, dude, like let me share just a small bit of history is I played the stupid drone game. I worked oil field, bro. Like you want to fucking 9 to 5, excuse my language, but you know, I was oil field, dude. There was no such 9 to 5 was like, you know, first shift, dude. That's like that, like you just finally got down home. You know what I mean? Now it's time to do work, you know? And but it didn't ever benefit me, dude. Like the more money I was trying to make, the more it cost me to make that money, the currency, and you get trapped in this lifestyle and you get trapped in where it takes you're paying for all these extra facets in your life because you ain't got the time to deal with it anymore. And you're playing with the banks and you're trying the stocks and you're trying the cryptos. And the whole point is like until you actually freaking own something and you own it when you hold it.
Yeah.
And it really does. It's supernatural the way it happens. It really is. It's supernatural the way it happens. You get one, next thing you know, you got 10. Next thing you know, you got 100.
Yeah.
It's I swear, there's no like real reason to understand how it just happens, but it does. And every single one of us experience this. When we step in. We all start with one. And the next thing we know, we got a whole display case in front of us full of all sorts of good stuff.
Right. And the first one you pick up, you're like, man, if I could ever own a 10-ounce bar or, if I had just a few more, but I'm happy with just the one I got, and then before long, like you say, you got a desk full of it. So,
yeah, before, like this little stack right here, like this goes with me every day in the Zippo case. I keep this in a Zippo case on my belt right here, and a pistol for all those with creative thoughts. But, next thing you know, like, but look, guys, the only way it's going to happen is you live in alignment with it. And that's what I've discovered. This is my anecdotal evidence. It worked for me. It worked for a lot of us, and look, I'm not a rich guy at all, dude. But this your paper dollars don't grow, but this does.
Yeah, you're going once you get this, you start going the other way. Whilst before that, you're going the other way down. I mean, it's literally you're one going down in one and up in the other. So it's pretty common sense once you get there.
Yeah, and I made metals, dude. I couldn't have saved enough dollars, like because of the cost of living over time. I literally couldn't save the dollars to put together any kind of good purchase. Well, I just recently liquidated. I say recently; it's been a bit now, but recently I liquidated all my metals, man. Like literally almost everything, but like, some gifts and stuff like this, right? And I liquidated almost everything to make a land purchase. But it's because I bought them whenever they were 23.
Yeah.
23, 25. Held on to them, sold them. Dude, my dollar, I couldn't have sold enough. Land was going up in cost. The whole time I'm saving, land's going up. Yep. Dollars going down.
Yep.
Land's going up, dollars going down. It's the same thing.
Yep.
But this held against it.
Yep.
So I wasn't making money on this. I was just preserving the money, just freezing it in in place. You see, like, and I made quote unquote profit, but really I got a fair value of land versus metal. It was a fair value, you know. It wasn't. I didn't make money on these. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
You know, the money I should have paid for that land, by the time the price of the land went up, you know, because our dollar's so fucking weak, you know, the price of the land had gone up, you know, and it seemed inexpensive. But whenever I compared it against my initial investment, I said, well, gee, that was actually the proper price of the land. The actual, what I felt was a proper value of the land was in my initial purchase of the metals. Am I saying this correctly?
Yeah.
When I purchased my metals, I'm buying them at 20, 25 an ounce, right? And that was my input. That was like me paying on that land. It was like that.
Yeah.
I paid that money on that land at that value that day.
Right.
And so in a way, it was like my land purchase, the cost when I decided to buy all these metals, it was like my land purchase met my metal cost, but my dollars had escalated.
Right.
You know, but this was still fair. These two were still fair and equal. And it's like their real values never changed.
Well,
You
that's
know,
it.
this reflected this.
That's all. I mean, we said that earlier. You're just explaining it in a real life transaction. I mean, you know, it's the see, if you look at it, if you just picture, let's picture an ocean, okay, and you've got your head is above water or it's below water, right? And so if the dollar has been above water all this time, gold had made all-time highs in all the other fiat dollars around the world except for the US dollar. And gold is surface level to the ocean. And when our dollar when we reached all-time highs in gold to our dollar, then now the dollar is underneath the water. And so everything above the water is natural, real things like commodities, like we're talking. So, in gold's terms, those commodities are going to stay fairly steady, right? And so with silver, but with the dollar, it's, we went into, negative territory in reality where, the commodities are going to be the things that start to rise and remain rising at a certain rate because that's reality. That's real value. And we are living in a false reality. So there's going to be ebbs and flows in these things as that false reality gets brought back to reality. But eventually we'll get there, and the commodities will be much higher. So
Well, and we're seeing that reality right now, like with our ratios. For anybody that like follows your GSR real carefully, as an example, you know, um, we have a false ratio going right now because it doesn't reflect anything like natural occurrence ratios, and it doesn't reflect anything like production ratios. You know, there's no reason for our gold to silver ratio to be the way it is right now. Because guess what? Natural ratios like 1 to 7, production ratios are like 1 to 15, 1 to 20. You know, why the heck are we at 1 to 100?
mm-hmm.
That's not so, and it's not right. It's absolute suppression, or either that, or it's just like the snowball that hasn't smoothed out yet. Still kind of like flop, flop, flop.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually it's going to pick up enough snow to smooth out and build steam.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, I got a sandwich over here that I'm kind of needing to get to, but I thought it was
Sandwiches are for girls to make for
a
us.
burger. It's a double patty burger with cheese and everything on it, and
That sounds really good, dude.
then there's like a chicken sandwich besides that. So I'm happy. I don't care what you call it.
Well, I feel like this was productive tonight.
Yeah,
You know, it felt good to get out at least.
good. Yeah, and I think it's important. I think I don't know nearly enough about it, and as metals people, we should probably know more. So I appreciate getting some of your knowledge out of you today, and hopefully, if anybody out there in chat has some good information they want to bring to the table, reach out to me in an email, and I'd be glad to have you on. And if not, I'm sure I'll get you back on, and we'll do this again, and increase our awareness of the metal world and the unique properties thereof and what makes them interesting. We definitely need to do a deep dive on osmium one of these nights too. So
Yeah, I think we intended on getting to that eventually, but
yeah. But no, it's a good start. So yeah, I appreciate everybody out there in chat. And you wanna add anything before we get out of here on tonight's message?
man, I just appreciate the reciprocation. I think it validates. I think it helps to validate, what we kind of already knew already. We're all sitting here in chat. We're sitting here talking to each other, and we all know it. And it's like these thoughts in the back of our mind, but here we are validating each other, how right we are. And I'd really like everybody to kind of be left with that. Like, you're right. You're right. Just go ahead and take the plunge, put your money where your mouth is, because you know what's right. Just do what's right, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and all you can do is all you can do, and don't fret about because it isn't enough. And like you say, you start off with one, and pretty soon you've got 10, and then a desk full, and then you're like, okay, we should tell other people to do this too because look at how positive it became for me when I didn't think I would ever be able to hold a 10-ounce bar. And so then it just becomes not a thing, and now you have something that's going upwards, and reality comes into play, and you're like, oh, I see the difference between this and this. And so it's healthy for your life in other ways, waking up to this, right? Like if the money system can be this off and people can be this harmed by the false reality of the fiat system, imagine what else we can be doing wrong that is greatly hindering. And the more you learn to wake up to the reality of what is and do best for what's yourself, then that's going to help in other areas. So yeah.
Yeah.
And
Very.
be careful about OTG in the chat. You never know. You never know.
I love OTG so much. I've got such a heart for OTG. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the troll in me that's just like, thank God somebody's doing it.
Good stuff.
No, I love this chat. Thanks for having me, bro.
Yep. Cool. All right, guys, we're going to wrap this one up tonight. We'll be back with more soon. So stay tuned. Really appreciate you guys hanging
They
out.
want to see the sandwich.
Thanks so much for subscribing and hanging out with us. I try not to say anything that all the other channels say all the time, and you guys are here anyway. And that means you truly made up your mind yourself. You weren't told to do any of that, and that's what we need. So I appreciate you all. And we'll be back with more soon. So we will catch you on the next one.